Hey, what's going on everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel's Strike Force, and in today's video we're going to be doing a little bit of a guide update video of sorts related to Dark Dimension, because now that we're in 2025, realize that it's been some time since I've done an update for these kinds of things. Specifically, I want to talk about Dark Dimension 7 and Mephisto, and Dark Dimension 8 related to Odin, and I want to go over all of the best characters that you can still use to get these characters unlocked. Yes, I know that there are people out there still working ahead on that, even though we're facing, or we are actually, sorry, we are in a level 105 cap now, and so things are going to be moving forward. But I want to take a look at all of the best characters that you can use for these lanes, for those that are still looking for a better understanding of what characters to use. So if you're ready to go, everybody, let's boil this down. Now, I do want to remind people of the MarvelStrikeForce.com Dark Dimension Planner, because this is a very good, insane resource here to use. It helps you understand if you have the gear or the ISO required in order to actually go ahead with these characters. But I want to start things first off with Dark Dimension City. And I'll be honest, not a lot has changed. There has been a little bit, and one thing that I do want to talk about is that yes, you see Blade and Oath that are on here because Night Stalkers is going to become farmable very, very soon. Should be honestly really soon, like within a week or so now at this point. And not much has changed other than that I don't know if you need to put in as much resources into Spider-Man Noir and Ghost Spider for the full 5 team of Spider Society. I still think that Spider Society is probably the best team of 2024, honestly, the best well-rounded team, and I will be leveling them up post level 100 because they also double dip for the race to 105 milestone. If you caught my video on that, then you would have known that because they're dual traded, so you'll get points for both characters. But as far as other characters that are going to be usable in the city section and beyond, like into the future of the game, it's going to be Night Stalkers, because by and large they're the Mystic Raid team, and you're going to need to put some levels into them as well. Blade and Oath are very strong characters, and so I would probably do this over Ghost Spider and Noir. I think that you don't really need the full 5 of Spider Society. Honestly, the new characters are good enough, so that's what I would do there. I mean, we can go back down and kind of take a look at the other options for City, and at this point in time, it's not that great. Like there are going to be some things. We'll talk about this when we get to City Villain, because there's very limited options there, but I wouldn't take them for the purposes of Dark Dimension 7. And so realistically, barring any future reworks, which we don't have yet, like maybe Vigilante will change this, there hasn't been a lot of updates in the city section, so there's really not a whole lot of option here, and I think that that's kind of the best of it. It's been this way for a little while, actually. So let's talk about Global, Dark Dimension 7 Global. Now, I've put here Orcus. There's a couple of trains of thought that you can do for Dark Dimension 7 specifically. I've decided to go with Orcus. Yes, I understand it's a lot of tech gear. I do feel that by and large, red gear has become widely more available, especially with the last 3-4 months of event stores, that they're kind of opening the valve on G19 gear that I don't think it's really that difficult. Lady Deathstrike's also a pretty cheap build, and the rest of them are pretty average at 3 pieces a pop, so it's not really that bad. This is also going to be the exact same team, more or less, that you're going to be using into Dark Dimension 8 Global Villain, so I think it's good double dipping there. But some other options, I mean, let's take a look at the global roster. I think there's a lot of characters, right? Let's be honest. All the X-Men and Avengers characters and all that, they're all covered by Global. And so as far as newer characters go, and we'll take a look at this specifically when we get to the Dark Dimension 8 Global Hero section, there are some other characters that you could consider. Namely, I do want to point out Cap Sam. So if you are going for a more Global Hero approach, rather than the Orcus Global Villain approach, then you could use Cap Sam, who is going to be reworked for Liberty, and who's going to be an insane plug-and-play tank. Honestly, he's probably going to be better than Black Knight, I think, without the Retaliate. But as far as stats go and all that, and he is farmable right now. And so you could go for like a global hero perspective with Nightcrawler. Yes, I'm trying to stay away from the older X-Men, but Nightcrawler is still an amazing plug-and-play with control, and that's really important in Dark Dimension to have that control capability. You might still need to consider that Nightcrawler, Sunspot, Forge combo. After that, you don't need Gambit anymore. I think that he can be put aside. We don't have the rest of the Liberty characters yet. I was never a super big fan of the Illuminati, honestly, in the Dark Dimension 7 or Dark Dimension 8, but that'll be entirely up to you. Also, this does include Hercules and Jean Grey, but I would also consider that without the synergy. Other characters of note actually would be OG Falcon, probably be for speed bar, and his damage actually is not too bad. So I would consider using him as well if you want to. If you want to, you double dip and upgrade for other means. But I would try and stick with newer characters where possible. If you are going with the X-Men side of the track, some people have been going with Storm. I don't remember where is Storm. Oh, she's up here. So she's a little bit more expensive, which is why I kind of cautioned about the whole G19 thing. It's 72. But a lot of people are going with the whole Nightcrawler, Forge, Sunspot, and Storm combo, and then you could like throw in Capstan. Just some examples. There's lots to pick from for global. Just make sure that the characters that you are upgrading for Dark Dimension 7 global are characters that you're likely going to be taking into Dark Dimension 8. Now, for the non-legendary, non-mythic, cosmic, I think this is about it, honestly. Like, I was looking at some of the other characters, and I'm not sure if there's that many that I can reasonably recommend. So we still have the Annihilators trio of Thanos Endgame, Gore, and Gladiator, who, honestly, I still think are going to be valid for quite some time. Not just because of, like, the arena meta, which is shifting away from them a little bit, but they're just really powerful characters. Thanos Endgame has a very unique mechanic with the exposed, and Kahori right now is really greatly positioned to combo with Thanos Endgame for Dark Dimension. I also really like Doctor Strange. He's a super cheap character to build for Astral, but also for Dark Dimension. He only requires 2 gear pieces, and I actually like how he works in this kind of situation, that he flips buffs, he can revive characters if they die, so there's a lot of good value that you can get, and I actually use this on my alt account. I used Doctor Strange on my alt account, and I had no qualms doing that, and actually worked really well. As far as other characters in the Cosmic section, it's not stellar. Is Miss Marvel Classic actually Cosmic? I mean, you could do that, I suppose. Is she actually cosmic? Maybe I'm not paying attention to her traits. Did I actually forget that? Really? Is she Miss Marvel? Miss Marvel Classic? Is she actually cosmic? She is cosmic. Okay. Well, I mean, if you wanted to, you could use her instead of Doctor Strange. I thought that she was global actually, but there you go. Which would be a good combination with Kahori. But I don't know if I would do like G19 Medusa at this point because they're not farmable. Other characters, I do want to say that I think Vol is at this point probably on the bench. I would not upgrade Vol for Dark Dimension 7 anymore. I would just replace Vol directly with Kahori at this point. And the other characters just are not really that good. I'm just looking through it right now. I can't say there are any other characters. I mean, maybe if we had Null. Apparently, because Null is not mythic, so, maybe in the future. But right now, that's, I think, the best it's going to get. Let me know in the comments down below. I mean, if there's anything that you feel that I really missed. But otherwise, I think that that's probably what it's going to be. Otherwise, Miss Marvel, I guess, would be the only other option there if you don't want to take Doctor Strange. Now, for the legendary section, we do have what's basically the Old Man Logan show. Like, I'm just going to be blunt and honest that a lot of this is just Old Man the rest of them staying alive, and Old Man Logan carrying the day. That's what it's been for quite some time, and it's still going to be that way. But now we have the inclusion of Shadow King. We also have some reworks with Invisible Woman and Phoenix, and Green Goblin's just kind of there, honestly, a little bit. As far as a fifth other option that we could look at, we could take a look at the legendary list. If there's some reworks down the line, I would probably replace Green Goblin as well, because I feel like most of his value was not really there. And sometimes, getting higher stars for him, even on my alt account, I believe I only got to 4-star because of how restrictive the trial for him was, and that I just wasn't able to, I didn't want to level the characters required to get him higher stars. And so you could replace him with someone a little bit more expensive. I'm not a big fan of the Horseman characters at this point because I just feel they're really outdated, in my opinion. But I know someone's going to come out into the comments and talk about Red Hulk. But it was never really a big thing for me. I don't think that they're so weak. That's the problem. If you actually legitimately run this at low stars, like 3 or 4 yellow, then they're probably not going to have a good time when it comes to actually surviving the nodes. So if you want to have a little bit of an easier time, you could use Black Bolt, honestly, for the Illuminati, but outside of that, it's not really that great. So the choices are not super stellar right now, but there might be some future reworks down the line, in which case I would replace Green Goblin Classic. Now, as far as the Mythic section goes, this still hasn't changed. They haven't the only new Mythic characters they've added, which was Odin. You're probably not having Odin before you get Mephisto. You might, but by and large, I would say that you kind of want Mephisto to unlock Odin, and they haven't added any other characters onto the Mythic trait, and so it's still this. is Super Skrull, Apocalypse, Ultimus, right? Which is at least you're going to get some value out of him, and Kestrel. As much as I don't want to continue leveling Kestrel or recommending that to level 100, that is just still the case of things because there's nobody else better to include here. Unfortunately, that's just what it is. So that is Dark Dimension 7 in a nutshell. Let's go over onto Dark Dimension 8, and you're going to see a lot of similar picks. So for non-legendary city hero for Dark Dimension 8, I'm kind of recommending the same thing. Now, one thing also is that Spider Society is used in Orcus raids, but no longer in Spotlight raid. Whether or not they're still the skill team for Orcus raid 2, it remains to be seen. I think that it could be the Vigilantes team. Will Spider Society be required to be used in Orcus 2? I don't know. And so whether or not you need purple ISO on them, like for future raids, that I can't say. But they're still kind of the best sets of characters to use, in my opinion. But because, like, again, what I said about 7, Blade, Oath, and the Night Stalkers team are going to become farmable, I think that this probably makes more sense to just try and double dip to use these characters once again from Dark Dimension 7. Where things become a little bit more challenging is Dark Dimension 8 City Villain, because there just is nothing new, and I don't see anything on the horizon either, right? We have the Liberty team coming out right now, and I think after that it's Dark Descendants, and then after that I think it's Vigilantes, and unless there's some city villains in the Vigilantes team, we're still looking at like 2+ months before some city villain characters come out. And so I think it's realistically the 3 Hive Mind characters, but keep in mind that you do not need to G19 them. On my alt account, I did G19 Red Goblin, but I left the others at G18, so I did not actually, they're very expensive. Carnage and Venom are both very expensive to upgrade, and so I left them at G18. For Craven and Vulture, Vulture's a cheap build, so I didn't mind doing G19 on Vulture. I actually like him as a plug-and-play character, and then I decided to go with Craven rather than Spider, Slayer, or one of the other characters. So that's just who I decided to use here. For Global Hero, again, you have this split on the global side. You have the Global Hero, and you have the Global Villain. Now, let's just be really quick here with Orcus on Global Villain. What you could also do is you could replace one of these characters with Apocalypse. Normally, I think that was Omega Sentinel typically that people would replace, but I actually heard that now that Orcus is farmable, that Omega Sentinel and the full 5 actually do better than with Apocalypse, which is weird because it's just the full synergy is that much better. So do keep that with a grain of salt, and I do think that you're going to be using this team into the future as well for Orcus Raid 2 for sure on this team. They're going to make the next raid. And then for Global Hero, this is what we talked about this a little bit in the 7 section. So I do think that Cap Sam is going to be that Black Knight typical replacement, and he is going to be an insane plug-and-play character with his turn bar and his tanking and his new era stats and all of that. So I think he's going to be a really good character to want to include here. It is not a raid team that you need to have purple ISO on Cap Sam, but I think he's going to be a really, really good character. Now for the other slots, for Global Hero, I mean, there's a few ways. We'll take a look. I do like the Storm inclusion. I have actually done this on my alt account, even though I don't play it anymore. I did use Storm with the 3-piece of Extreme X-Men. I'm really trying to move away from the Extreme X-Men, but you do really need the control. This is actually the hardest section in Dark Dimension 8, which is going up against Orcus and a crap ton of Sentinels and all of that, that you really need the control, the ability blocks, the slows, the stuns, and all of that, which you get a lot of from these characters here. Now, we'll take a look at the Global Hero section. There's obviously some other alternatives, but I'm not sure how amazing they are or not, and maybe we can get some feedback in the comments down below. I was never really a big fan of the Illuminati. Like I said, for 7, so the whole Captain Britain and Hank Pym, I did Hank Pym on my main, and he didn't really do much for me. Honestly, I didn't really feel that great about him. Another character that actually worked fairly well plug and play was actually Guardian. I know that's going to sound really weird. I had him because you're probably going to have him purple ISO 3 for Alpha Flight for Spotlight 2, depending on what your priority is, if you've done that first or not, but you're going to need to do that. And so Guardian actually worked well on the control aspect when I did need it. When I needed the stun for Guardian, actually it was there. But the other characters like Sasquatch and Northstar, you're not really going to make much use of in Dark Dimension 8 Global Hero. So while you might have them available, they're probably not going to do much for you. So as far as what other characters might be valid, there is not a lot. Like maybe you could try and wiggle Hercules and Jean Grey in, but I don't think you're going to get a lot of value. The only other character that I'd like to point out is Falcon, because once again, Uncanny Avengers, Spotlight Raid 2, you are going to need to take him to Purple 3, and I think that because of his speed bar mechanics, you might actually get some pretty good value. But he doesn't really have control necessarily. He just has speed bar mechanics, which will help get the other characters moving up. I think at this point you can abandon Gambit, though. I don't think you need to really raise him up for this. But I think by and large, you're still kind of stuck a little bit. At least you're going to get some good value out of Storm if you bring her in. And Nightcrawler, Forge, and Sunspot. The reason is because you need the charges that Sunspot gives to fuel Nightcrawler every single attack, that kind of thing, because it gives energy on spawn. So that's kind of important. And obviously you have the wider X-Men synergy here still. I just think if you try to include some of the new era X-Men, it's not going to go over that well because they're specific to their game modes. Jean Grey is specific to raids and Cosmic Crucible, and the other Immortal X-Men probably aren't going to give you a ton of value either. I did actually use Beast, but that's more on the support angle and not necessarily the crowd control angle. So if you are going to include Beast, you might need to remove someone like Cap Sam, I think, to include them in there, but that's just me. And finally, we have the Legendary or Cosmic section. I don't think a lot of this has changed much either, honestly, the wisdom for this one. I still believe that Old Man Logan is still very important, just like he is in Dark Dimension 7. Now we've had the inclusion of Mephisto, and then we have Super Skrull, Kahori, and Thanos Endgame. So you're going to have a lot of exposed mechanics out here. You're going to have exposed on Super Skrull, Mephisto, Thanos Endgame, and Kahori, all utilizing the exposed mechanic to a different degree. And then Old Man Logan's just going to go to town on his ultimate, putting trauma on everyone. So it's just a really insane combination there. Basically, Kahori has become the replacement to Vol, because Vol was the common wisdom previously on Dark Dimension 8 in that section to give more ability energy battering. I really don't think you need to use Vol that much anymore, so I think that this is skippable. As far as the other characters go, you could also use Shadow King, right? So who would I remove for Shadow King? That's a tough call. I still think Kahori's really good, so maybe you could get rid of Super Skrull? I feel like there's not a lot of wiggle room here. So I would be curious, for those of you that did use Shadow King in Dark Dimension 8 Legendary Cosmic, which character did you get? Probably Kahori, because I don't think that she was actively, people didn't have a lot of stars on them at that time. So you could probably get rid of Kahori and put in Shadow King. But I think having the amount of exposed that she can put on other characters, which helps for the energy battering of Thanos Endgame, is quite helpful. So you could fool around with that a little bit, but I don't think there's much else on this list that I would even really consider at this point outside of Shadow King, because a lot of people do have him at 7-star. His trial's also been around a couple of times now, so there's that. The rest of the characters at this point in time, I don't think you really need to consider. So that's going to be it. That's going to be my Dark Dimension 7 and 8 guide. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below if you're still working your way towards them. One final thing that I do want to mention is that some people have been asking me, well, should you be focusing on Spotlight Raid 2 or Odin? And this is a very challenging question because it really depends on your alliance. If your alliance is waiting on you for whatever reason to, get to that next threshold for Spotlight Raid 2, I would probably consider doing that, honestly, because it's daily content and stuff that you're going to be doing daily. If your alliance is not there yet, though, I would then focus on Odin. Hopefully we get some more purple ISOs, more ways to get purple ISO in the weeks ahead. Honestly, weeks, like, we need it because they're throwing so much content at us that also requires purple ISOing these other characters that they really need to unlock the valve on that resource. So that's going to be the end of this video, everyone. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see y'all later. Boilon signing out.